What's up, everybody? We are back with another live edition of the Ad Podcast, coming to you from Possible in Miami. We're here with Clayton Hinson from DecisionLinks. What's up, Clayton?
How's it going, Dylan?
So tell me a little bit more about yourself, your role, and what do you guys do at DecisionLinks?
Yeah, so we're a third-party data company.
Okay.
All the data I'll describe is data we've got sitting on our own systems. We're not reselling somebody else's, turning around and asking them. We're an agent processor of Equifax. We house Equifax's entire U.S. consumer file. The real world that looks like is that marketing program where you get a letter in the mail saying you've been pre-approved to buy a car. Mm-hmm. We help facilitate those marketing programs. We meet a need in the marketplace of speed that typically is pretty tough if you're going directly to a bureau themselves. The classic example is if a marketing agency wants to send 5,000 mailers to sell cars this weekend. It's pretty hard to do at a big bureau.
Yeah.
So we fill a need, so that's why Equifax supports us. The rest of the data is not Equifax data. We house national emails, mobile ad IDs, hashed emails, IPs, connected TV devices, then property data, your traditional consumer data, ethnicity, income, age, household information, presence of children. And we compile that into a master data set. Product-wise, we do about three things in the broader space. We do custom audiences or lists. In the direct mail world, everything's custom. So you want to make an audience that meets your criteria, your rules, or use a model to build it, and you want it to be those X records. We also build custom audiences in the ad tech space, so we'll deliver the folks that you want to a trade desk seat or a DV360 seat, those kinds of things. Wholesale data, which is what I'm primarily doing here at Possible. If you have an identity graph, if you are powering a product like an audience, there's an underlying data set that's being leveraged to build that, right? So if you have an identity graph, you want names and addresses and emails and phone numbers and date of births and unique identifiers, VINs. If you're activating audiences, you want mobile ad IDs and hashed emails and IP addresses and connected TV devices. I describe data as a funnel or a pyramid. Data's getting vacuumed up into the ecosystem. If you put the trade unions and experience and the really big data companies at the top, there's a middle layer of aggregators. And so as a company, we are bringing in data, compiling it into an aggregated data set, linking it together, and giving it, selling it to other data companies to power their products. Sometimes it's an audience, sometimes that's an identity graph, sometimes it's an email marketing program. I sit in 3 seats at our company. My title is chief strategist. I help buy our data, so I'm probably the first person to look at a new data source. I am on the front line selling it, which is a new role for me starting this year. I'm out there selling data, and then I play a product engineer, solutions engineer role for the rest of our sales team. Okay,
very cool. So I don't think this would be a interview without talking about AI. How are you guys leveraging AI to better make sense of these massive data sets?
Yeah, so there's several ways that we use it. I'll use the most traditional. If you're doing database marketing, direct response performance campaigns, you can use models. AI is a fancy word for model, right? There's versions of these things to find those. The classic example in the direct response space, which is not traditionally the ad tech space, is if you mail 100,000 people and you get a 1% response rate, that's great. It's a rare event. It takes a lot of really good machine learning processes to make incremental improvements on those programs. A human can only get so far. It's really easy to determine this if you use rules or segments. People who haven't bought in a car in the last 18 months, right? They're more likely to buy a car than somebody bought a car 6 months ago. Humans can make it that far, right? But if you want to do a multivariate analysis and really find incremental improvement over time, you use a model. The most advanced way we're using it, I'm a little out of my skis on the technical part of this, is our company is pioneering a technology using vector databases and LLMs that we're calling a semantic match. And when you do record linkage, you have lots of problems. But let's say you have an underlying data set of 1.5 billion records. There's only 330 million consumers in the United States. Squeezing that down into those 330 million records is the challenge that all the big data companies, the small data companies, people with first-party data, people doing DMPs and CDPs.
You're trying to match those data sets to basically come down to one unique identifier.
That's right, and it's how far you get. That's the challenge. And if you use a traditional deterministic methodology, is the name and address the same? Is the email the same? You can only get so far. Probabilistic, which what most people think about, is 0.75 right? Some number of how accurate it is the next methodology. Some people embrace that or they don't. So what the company is trying to pioneer is using a vector database and an LLM, which we call semantic match. If you embed that, and again, out of my technical range a little bit, you embed that into a multi-dimensional space and you ask how far apart they are. You're asking the same question using a different process. The embedding uses an LLM, and you get a different match. So if we're all trying to compress this large data set down into the single records, this is a new technique, a new process, and it's using an LLM and a vector database to do that. And what we found is we're seeing 7, 10, 15, 25% increases in unique matches depending on the data sets. Matching the credit file to the VIN or credit file to the email, they have their own challenges, right? And so, we're talking internally about, can we pioneer this technology? Can we use it for ourselves? And then can we take it to the marketplace?
Nice. You talked about 2 use cases, offline and online direct mail pieces, but also then using the data to power DSPs like Trade Desk, etc.
Yeah, that's right.
You guys doing much in the idea of like matching messaging from household, like doing the same campaign in 2 different channels, like doing the direct mail piece, but then
that's
also
our
trying
bread
to...
and butter.
Okay, nice.
I came from the world of politics. I ran the digital operations for U.S. Senate races and governor's races in a past life.
Nice. Where there's no rules under personal identification, which I found out opening up our DC office a long time ago.
I will skip that part of this. But
Sure.
that world is an offline world.
Yep. Door knocking, propensity
canvassing.
to... Yep.
You have a defined set of people that you're trying to reach. And then you have all the different methods of reaching them. Knocking on doors, right? Placing billboards, radio ads, TV ads, digital. And so I came from a world in which that was the concept. And when I came to our company, which the original company was primarily financial services, helping agencies or entities who sell loans, selling cars, selling a loan, using the credit file, it was a pretty seamless transition for us to say, you should be sending these people emails, serving them display ads. We have national auto refinance companies that we work with, national marketing entities that we work with that do that exact approach. We're going to start with a list of people. We're going to build them offline, and we're going to send them emails. And we're going to send them direct mail. And we're going to serve them display ads, and we're going to serve them social ads, and we're going to track the entire campaign back to the people we started with. And when you talk about an end user, what they really care about is cost per good sold or profit.
Yep.
Impressions and clicks and opens and all of the things that happen to get there are great, but that's how they make their money.
Right.
And we do that at an individual basis. We use things like pre-filled landing pages. We use DSPs that allow us to bring a mobile ad ID into a URL structure where we know who got an impression, who got a click. I know who opens emails. I know who clicks the emails. Some of the social channels, you don't get the same level of individual. But we try to take it all back to who did what. And I like to talk to my customers and things like this. If I can get 7 or more impressions, or I get 2 email opens, your cost per funded loan goes down by X. And that makes dollar sense for them.
Yeah, you can kind of tie it back to performance, to how does that have a direct impact on a transaction.
That's right. And so it's really easy to look at a single channel and say, is the email program good because it opens? Is an email good program because it clicks? Display, cost, CPM, impressions, and your objective matters. I'm not going to discredit other objectives, but if your objective is to sell a product or a loan or something, those channels need to be judged on the final outcome, and you shouldn't judge them independently. I've had clients who wanted to turn off the email program when they saw the open rate or the delivery rate. Well, then when I tell them, if they're on the email program and we're sending them emails and we're serving them display ads, it's 12% lower than the people we're just sending mail to. They don't want to turn the program off.
Yeah, so you can justify how the holistic approach affects the bigger picture.
Of course, we'd love to have all of the answers. Modeling.
Yeah. It's that adage, I know my marketing's working, I just don't know which part.
It's a challenge we're all fighting, right?
Yeah.
But you asked about AI and modeling. There's only a few people that really know how the models work. And some of the really sophisticated ones nobody knows, right? Like, I mean, and what I mean by that is there's an intentional black box, again, out of my
Or a
technical
walled
range,
garden.
neural net,
Yeah.
where the point is not that a human knows every single thing. If you think of a model as a regression model where all the weights and the numbers are, a human can easily understand that, right? You take some basic math. The really complicated ones are very hard to understand the outcome, but that's if you're optimizing for outcome. Sometimes you don't need to know every bit. Obviously, you don't want to make assumptions. You obviously don't want to have noise in the system. The whole space is fighting that challenge. But I do think a multi-channel program where you start with a person and you measure an outcome allows for a lot of clarity that some other campaign types don't have. And I think that's an approach that we're seeing embraced in the space.
It's awesome, man. Well, if people at home want to learn more, what's the best way to connect with you or to learn more about what you guys are up to?
Awesome. Well, we of course have a website, DecisionLinks.com. You'll find me on LinkedIn. And I'm sure this will be posted somewhere and maybe tagged, so you can feel free to DM me.
You got it. All right, thanks for coming on, man.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.